And a huge thank you to all of our Patreons.
Thank you to the Pit Fighters, the First Swords, and all of the Bright Stars, Truth and Courage.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears as today, myself, Ed from the Brothers Gwyn, I'm going to be chatting about books that I think are going to be 5-star predictions. I've got 10 books here that hopefully I'm mostly certain I'm going to absolutely love. I mean, obviously, I always choose books that I read that I think I'm going to enjoy. But these books are ones that are screaming out to me that are books that could potentially end up on my favourites list. So without further ado, let's get on with it. The first one for me is The Will of the Many. Now, this book is by James Arlington, who also wrote the Lycanius trilogy. It's a fantasy book telling of a fugitive sneaking into an academy to try and bring a republic down. Sort of like Red Rising, that kind of vibe. I've heard amazing things about this. Why do I think it'll be a 5-star book? Because I've heard James Arlington is a masterful fantasy writer. I've heard that this is his best book by far, even though the Lycanius trilogy is really, really loved. And I also have heard amazing reviews from Daniel Green, from Petrick, and many, many others. So all of these good reviews have, led me to think this is going to be a pretty good read. I've heard that it's visceral. I've heard that it is incredibly tense, and that the final third is utterly amazing. I think Petrick said that this is his favourite, fantasy character goes to school since Name of the Wind, and that is a good sign for me. When I read Name of the Wind, I must have been 16. I absolutely loved it. I'd hoped I might do a reread of Name of the Wind this year, possibly. But The Will of the Many is a book that is jumping out to me that it could be on my favourites list, and I know that when I read it, I'm going to absolutely love it. The next one is Housemade of Dawn by N. Scott Mummaday. This book has been on my list for a really long time, and I'm so buzzing to get to it. It's a book by a Native American author about a Native American man who has arrived back in America after a foreign war, and it tells the story of this character being pulled in two different directions. Firstly, he has the capitalist America, every man for himself, that kind of way of life pulling at him in one direction, and then the other is his Native American ancestry, his traditions, his family rights pulling at him as well, and he is I think at war with himself as to how he should live his life. He has all of these different avenues available to him, and he's being, as I said, pulled in different directions. And I've heard that this is a work of genius. I've heard it is one of the most important Native American literatures that we should be reading. And it's a book, like I said, has been on my TBR for a long time, but I'm definitely going to pull the plug on it very, very soon. And I'm so excited to read it. I've loved reading Louise Erdrich's works lately. I've loved James Welch's works, and I loved Ceremony, and I'm hopefully going to love Housemade of Dawn. Here we have another book that is quickly becoming a classic. This book was written, I believe, in the 60s by John Williams, who was an amazing writer. I've read his Butcher's Crossing, which is a revisionist Western, and it was absolutely incredible, that book. And Stoner is considered John Williams's magnum opus, and it's the story of a teacher, essentially, in an American university, an American college, I believe in Missouri, and that is all I know about it. It's one of those books that I don't really look at reviews of it. I just see it crops up so much as one of people's favourite books. And that has really drawn me to it. Knowing that John Williams is a great writer, he really gets into this psychological, under the psychological skin, really, of these characters. And especially in Butcher's Crossing, when I read that, was absolutely breathtaking the way that he did that. And he made the reader almost participate in the atrocities that were going on in Butcher's Crossing. I know that Stoner is the whole premise of it is completely different, but knowing that John Williams is a talented writer, I'm excited for this. I know that Joanna has read it. I know that Alan has read it. So I'm definitely going to be vibing with this, I think, for sure. Stoner is a book that's, like I said earlier, all of these books really have been on my list for a very, very long time, apart from one or two, which I will mention. But yeah, Stoner is definitely something I think will be a 5-star read for me. Cloud Splitter by Russell Banks is a book that cropped up on my TBR about a week ago, and straight away I knew that I had to order it, and I knew that I had to get to it soon, because This book was recommended by Travel Through Stories. If you don't follow him on Twitter or BookTube, then please do, because I absolutely love his channel. He always recommends books that I don't really see cropping up too often. Cloud Splitter is the story of the Civil War in America, and it's the story of a man who is the most famous political terrorist, and he was famous for attempting to free Southern slaves. And it is the story of this man and his relationship with his son. And I'm really, really intrigued by this. When I tweeted not too long ago, what kind of books should I be reading if I want to read more about, parent interactions? And Cloud Splitter is also a book that cropped up a few times. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how what the dynamic is between the father and the son. And also, I love reading about 19th century America. So obviously, this book is going to feed into one of my literary passions. So I'm really, really excited about Cloud Splitter. It's a pretty chunky book, which I'm looking forward to. I haven't really read a big book in a long time, so I'm looking forward to getting into this. I've heard that Russell Banks is a brilliant writer. He has a way with words, and I know from recommendations and reading reviews on Goodreads and Amazon, that kind of thing. I've heard that Russell Banks has a way with words. I've heard that he's a brilliant writer and that he is able to capture different characters' quirks, unlike most authors, which is brilliant to hear. So that is another reason why I've definitely been drawn to this. But yeah, when I get recommended a book by Travel Through Stories, I'm probably going to read it. Ocean Vuong's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. I saw recommended on Jack Edwards' channel. I love watching Jack Edwards' videos. He always recommends books that I see in Waterstones and then I always want to pick up, but I haven't really heard much about it. Then I hear it from him and then I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go get it. But this is the story, or so I've heard from reading reviews on Goodreads. It is the story of a letter written by a son to a mother who cannot read. And it tells of their Vietnamese heritage. It tells of the impact of the war. It tells of the dynamic between the past and the future for these people. And I've heard that more people have cried at this book than watching Watership Down, which is the most harrowing film ever made. I don't know why it's a U. It should be an 18 in my opinion. But yeah, I've heard this book is absolutely heartbreaking and that it really is a gut punch. And I don't know why I'm drawn to that. I don't know. I guess books make us feel. I don't know. Someone said it. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading this. I've heard it's absolutely mesmerising and a book that makes you experience all sorts of emotions. That is exactly what I'm looking for as a reader, to become 100% invested, fully immersed, and, having this emotional connection to the characters, exploring various themes. I've heard Ocean Vuong is a fantastic new age writer, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what it's like. Another book recommended by Travel Through Stories, and this is called The Kindly Ones by Jonathan Littell. And this is a book, a pretty harrowing subject. It is a little bit like Apt Pupil by Stephen King in terms of it is an ex-Nazi telling of his participation in World War II. And I believe that this character, this person, has been through lots of the pivotal moments of World War II, including the invasion of Russia, the fall back into Berlin, and also Hitler's Eagle Nest. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. I've read a lot about World War II. All guys probably in their teenagers have their World War II phase, don't they? And I was no exception. I think I was obsessed with Band of Brothers between the years of 2010 and 2014. I think I probably watched it twice a year. And I've read all sorts of Max Hastings' book, Anthony Beevor. Anthony Beevor's actually got his own quote there saying that it's a masterful work. So I'm looking forward to reading this. It's a very big book as well. It's an epic. I am very intrigued to see if this kind of book does the subject matter justice. You kind of feel if you're writing about something this serious and, this horrific, that it has to be done absolutely perfectly. Otherwise, it may fall into poor taste. But we will see. I'm really looking forward to reading it, seeing what I think of it. I've heard amazing things. It is a French book. It's been translated into English. I wish I could read French. I teach French at school as a teacher, but I definitely wouldn't be able to read a full book in it. Definitely not that good. But I'm looking forward to reading this nevertheless. Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams is a book that I'm sure you have all seen crop up on BookTube many, many times. It is a book that inspired George R. R. Martin to write A Song of Ice and Fire. Not sure if you've heard of him. I think he's going to be big. But yeah, Tad Williams is meant to be a fantastic author. I met him many, many years ago when I was a wee lad, and I really enjoyed meeting him. It was very, very interesting. I got a book signed by him, so I was absolutely buzzing with that. Even though I had no idea who he was. I didn't realise what a fantasy giant he was at that age. But yeah, the Dragonbone Chair this book is actually, I think if you go back to one of our very first videos on BookTube, on the Brothers Gwyn, please don't watch it because I cringe whenever I see those old videos. But I think this is a book that I actually mentioned in that I was going to be reading that year. So obviously you can tell, I didn't stick to that. Shame on me. But maybe it was for a reason. Maybe I'm waiting till the right time in my life. Maybe I need a Simon in my life, because the main character of this book is called Simon, which is kind of strange in a fantasy world, but oh well, we don't mind. This is, as I said, a book that has inspired many authors to write their own works, including George R. R. Martin. So it must be a work of art. I've heard lots of booktubers have absolutely loved it. I remember Jimmy Nuts putting this onto me for the first time. I know that Dad, Papa Gwyn, absolutely loves this series, so I'm really looking forward to reading it. It's the story of an apprentice in a league sent to undertake a quest to bring down the Storm King, and that premise just obviously brings back classic fantasy vibes, and I really want to get to more classic fantasy this year. I definitely would like to read the Gormenghast trilogy, as well as some more Glenn Cook, and maybe any other classic fantasy that you guys would recommend. So please hit me up in the comments below. What classic fantasy should I be reading? So yeah, the Dragonbone Chair is a book that I think will be a 5-star for me, judging by the reviews, judging by the people in the fantasy community, the wonderful fantasy community that have recommended it to me and said that this is a book probably that I would enjoy. Warlock by Oakley Hall is meant to be an incredible Western. It was written in the 50s, and it is a reimagining of the American town Tombstone. If you've seen the film Tombstone with Kurt Russell, you know that film is one of the greatest films ever made. Val Kilmer is one of the best actors, and his performance as Doc Holliday was masterful. But this is a reimagining of it, as I said, and it is changing some of the characters slightly, being inspired by the events of Tombstone and taking it in its own direction. And Oakley Hall is, as I've read, a brilliant writer. He is said to have captured the Western genre absolutely perfectly, and at the time in the 1950s, he took it in a completely new direction, which contemporary readers would really, really enjoy. I read a little bit of Louis L'Amour, and I haven't enjoyed him too much. Obviously, he was wildly successful in the 50s and the 60s, etc. But Oakley Hall's Warlock is meant to be of a different ilk, cut from different cloth, or so I've heard anyway. Hopefully, I'll be able to tell you more after I've read it. But if you know me, you know that I love the American West. You know that I love any Western book. And that that I will definitely be interested in reading something that takes the Western genre in a new direction. The more I read Westerns, the more I read this genre, the more that I realise that the books that I love in this genre are ones that take it a step further, the ones that take it in a completely new direction. It's a little bit like Viking fiction. You can very quickly, if you focus on it, read tons and tons and tons of books set in Dark Ages Britain, which, after you've read 13 books in Bernard Cornwell's series, can get pretty dry and can get a little bit, not irritating, but, you're burned out by it. When you read Rob Lowe's Viking Age series, and these travellers are going around all different parts of the world, they're going to Constantinople and etc., then you get a little bit excited. It's new territory, isn't it, as a reader, and that is exciting for me. And Oakley Hall apparently did this with Warlock, so I'm excited. Number 9 is Station 11. Now, I won't lie, I've seen this book be recommended on TikTok a lot lately. I've given in and I've ordered it. Usually I don't really buy books from seeing it on TikTok, but this one was definitely sold to me. I know that this book is not old, but it's definitely not new. I believe there's a television program about it. But it's called Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Now, I've seen her book, I believe it's called The Sea of Tranquility, crop up on Goodreads a lot, and I've definitely been interested in it. I really love the cover of that. Station 11 is, I think, her first book, and it is a post-apocalyptic story of after a cataclysmic virus has ruined much of the world. There are different factions of humanity still alive, and Here, this follows a character who is, I believe, in a Shakespeare reenactment society, which, you know, of course, in a post-apocalyptic world, the first thing you want to do is start your own Shakespeare performance group. So yeah, I'll do that probably. But yeah, Station 11 is meant to be a fantastic book. It's a book that defies genres. It's a book that has intrigued many readers, many people into reading it. And with the popularity it has received, it has definitely piqued my interest. I love reading books in post-apocalyptic worlds. It is just not a time period, obviously, but it's futuristic, and it definitely intrigues me. It definitely makes me want to read more. It definitely interests me, especially The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Absolutely love that. I love watching films taking on this concept because it's always new. It always feels quite fresh. I haven't really read much post-apocalyptic works, but from what I've seen, what I have read, they do feel quite fresh compared to each other. So, you know, that's another reason why I think I will enjoy this. And the last one for me is James Baldwin's Javans Room. Now, this book I've heard defies so much. It was written by James Baldwin, who at the time, a black author writing about white homosexuality was considered utterly ludicrous. And James Baldwin has an absolutely fantastic name. I've seen so many people say that he is among their greatest authors of all time list. I've seen so many authors that I love reading say that James Baldwin was such a huge inspiration for them. So seeing this, I had to pick up Javans Room. Now, this story is about a white man who's recently married, starts having an affair with another man. And you know, from what I've heard, it is a heartbreaking story. It discusses so many different themes. It plays on race and sexuality. And I'm really, really interested to see how James Baldwin writes. I've heard that he has a fantastic voice, that his way of writing is utterly unique. And, you know, as someone who loves reading, I've read quite a few books. I always love seeing someone's fresh take on, you know, with their own prose. I love seeing how individual writers are. And James Baldwin's, you know, fantastic name has led me to believe that this will be a 5-star read. There we have my predictions. That's just 10 quick books that I think I will absolutely love. They're all on my list to read this year. So check back at the end of the year and, you know, you can have a look and see if I did think these were 5 stars. Lots of booktubers have inspired me in reading some of these as well. So thank you to this great community. Thank you to people's recommendations. Let me know in the comments below. Do you like any of these books? Are any of these books ones that you absolutely hated and that you wanted to put on the fire? Are any of them the ones that you consider some of your favourites? And what other books do you think I would absolutely love? But yeah, stay safe. Hope to see you in the comments. Truth and courage. The brother, Gwyn.